From a flicker of candlelight in 1789 to the glare of modern screens in the West Wing, every president has held the pen. Executive orders not passed by Congress, but etched into law by command. Some shaped history. Some sparked controversy. Others were forgotten. Until now. This is where we break them down. Every signature, every shift in power, every consequence still felt today. From Washington to Biden, welcome to Executive Order Watch.
Democracy, we live for it. For democracy, we fight for it. For democracy, we've died for it. And for democracy, we watch it. This is Executive Order Watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Americans, 1988 marked the closing chapter of my presidency. It was a year of farewells, summits, transitions, and above all, consequences. The weight of decisions past and present lingered in the air as we moved closer to the end of a chapter in American history, my chapter. This year, the Cold War showed more cracks in the ice than ever before. I stood beside Mikhail Gorbachev, not as enemies, but as men determined to dial down the doomsday clock. The INF treaty we signed the year before began to take real effect. Nuclear missiles were dismantled, borders softened, and fear subsided. I didn't just talk tough, I walked the path to peace, without surrendering our values or our strength. Domestically, the gears of the American economy kept turning. We had weathered the recession and emerged with lower inflation, more jobs, and revived markets. But even I could see that not everyone was winning. The gap between the wealthy and the working class was widening. While some toasted prosperity, others still struggled to get by. In 1988, I pushed forward with deregulation, reform, and defense spending. I sought to secure the free market from the grip of bureaucracy and keep America ahead of every adversary. But I also wrestled with deficits and the unintended consequences of earlier cuts, issues my successor would inherit, as I had from mine. Internationally, we saw the Iran-Iraq War come to a bloody end, and I ordered Operation Praying Mantis in the Persian Gulf, the largest naval engagement since World War II. Tensions ran high, but we stood firm in defending American lives and interests. Closer to home, we witnessed the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing over Lockerbie. Terrorism had struck again, and it was a tragic reminder that while our Cold War may have cooled, new threats were on the horizon. As I prepared to hand the reins to Vice President George H.W. Bush, I delivered a farewell address not of sorrow but of warning and hope. I asked America to stay vigilant, to hold fast to the values that made her great, and to protect the shining city upon a hill we had all worked so hard to build. Now, before we turn the page completely, we'll take a look, a careful, thoughtful look, at the executive orders I signed in that final year. Each one a brushstroke on the canvas of policy. Some made waves, others set quiet precedents. Get ready. We're about to dive into the final set of decisions that helped define the Reagan doctrine and closed out the conservative revolution of the 1980s. Stay with me. The executive orders of 1988 are next. Executive Order 12,623 delegating authority to implement assistance to the Nicaraguan Democratic Resistance on January 6, 1988. Executive Order 12,624 increasing the number of members on the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board on January 6, 1988. Executive Order 12,625 integrity and efficiency in federal programs on January 27, 1988. Executive Order 12,626 National Defense Stockpile Manager on February 25, 1988. Executive Order 12,627 amending the President's Commission on Privatization on February 29, 1988. Executive Order 12,628 United Nations Industrial Development Organization on March 8, 1988. Executive Order 12,629 Nuclear Cooperation with Euratom on March 9, 1988. Executive Order 12,630 governmental actions and interference with constitutionally protected property rights on March 15, 1988. Executive Order. 12,631 Working Group on Financial Markets on March 18, 1988. Executive Order 12,632. Exclusions from the Federal Labor Management Relations Program on March 23, 1988. Executive Order 12,633. Amending the Code of Conduct for members of the Armed Forces of the United States on March 28, 1988. Executive Order 12,634. Delegating authority to provide assistance and support for peace, democracy, and reconciliation in Central America on April 1, 1988. Executive Order 12,635 prohibiting certain transactions with respect to Panama on April 8, 1988. Executive Order 12,636 establishing an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Chicago and Northwestern Transportation Company and certain of its employees represented by the United Transportation Union on April 20, 1988. Executive Order 12,637 Productivity Improvement Program for the Federal Government on April 27, 1988. Executive Order 12,638. Delegation of functions relating to the implementation of the Inter-American Convention on Letters Rogatory and Additional Protocol on April 28, 1988. Executive Order 12,639 Administration of Foreign Relations and Related Functions on May 6, 1988. Executive Order 12,640. The President's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities on May 10, 1988. Executive Order 12,641, designating certain facilities of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in the state of Mississippi as the John C. Stennis Space Center on May 20, 1988. Executive Order 12,642, designation of the Secretary of Defense as the presidential designee under Title I of the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act on June 8, 1988. Executive Order 12,643, International Committee of the Red Cross on June 23, 1988. Executive Order 12,644, establishing an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation and certain of its employees, represented by the Transportation Communications Union Carmen Division on July 9, 1988. Executive Order 12,645, amending Executive Order 12364, relating to the Presidential Management Intern Program on July 12, 1988. Executive Order 12,646, establishing an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation and certain of its employees represented by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers on July 13, 1988. Executive Order 12,647, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency on August 2, 1988. Executive Order 12,648, relating to the implementation of the Convention on the Civil Aspects of International Child Abduction on August 11, 1988. Executive Order 12,649, offsets in military-related exports on August 11, 1988. Executive Order 12,650. Establishing an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation and certain of its employees represented by the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers on September 9, 1988. Executive Order 12,651, offices of the Commission of the European Communities on September 9, 1988. Executive Order 12,652, return of authority to administer Federal Employees Compensation Act to the Department of Labor from the Panama Canal Commission on September 19, 1988. Executive Order 12,653, amending Executive Order 11,183, relating to the President's Commission on White House Fellowships on September 29, 1988. Executive Order 12,654, delegating authority to provide assistance for the Nicaraguan resistance on October 7, 1988. Executive Order 12,655, establishing an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation and certain of its employees represented by the Transportation Communications Union, Carmen Division on November 7, 1988. Executive Order 12,656, Assignment of Emergency Preparedness Responsibilities on November 18, 1988. Executive Order 12,657, Federal Emergency Management Agency Assistance in Emergency Preparedness Planning at Commercial Nuclear Power Plants on November 18, 1988. Executive Order 12,658, President's Commission on Catastrophic Nuclear Accidents on November 18, 1988. Executive Order 12,659, Delegation of Authority regarding the Naval Petroleum and Oil Shale Reserves on December 15, 1988. Executive Order 12,660, National Microgravity Research Board on December 16, 1988. Executive Order 12,661, implementing the Omnibus Trade and Competitiveness Act of 1988 and related international trade matters on December 27, 1988. Executive Order 12,662, implementing the United States-Canada Free Trade Implementation Act on December 31, 1988. Executive Orders. Executive Order 12,663, adjustments of certain rates of pay and allowances on January 6, 1989. Executive Order 12,664, establishing an emergency board to investigate a dispute between the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation and certain of its employees represented by the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers on January 6, 1989. Executive Order 12,665, amending Executive Order Number 12,658, the President's Commission on Catastrophic Nuclear Accidents on January 12, 1989. Executive Order 12,666, exclusions from the Federal Labor Management Relations Program on January 12, 1989. Executive Order 12,667, presidential records on January 18, 1989.
Where we deliver happiness one slice at a time. What's your craving today?
Yeah, hi. Is Seymour there?
Oh, Seymour. I think he might be busy making our special pies. But hey, why not swing by the pizzeria? We've got a pie with your name on it. Anything else I can help you with?
I was looking for Seymour Butts.
Ah, I see. Well, if you're looking for Seymour Butts, he might be hiding behind a pepperoni slice. Anything else I can do for you today?
No, that's it.
Hi, I'm Terrence, a marketing professional with a passion for helping your business grow smarter and faster. Here at DaBomb Digital Media, based right here in Atlanta, Georgia, we specialize in bringing your vision to life. Whether you're launching your first website or reimagining your entire digital presence, we've got you covered. From modern website design and search engine optimization to setting up your own AI-powered agency tools, we deliver innovative solutions that keep you ahead of the curve. Ready to unlock your business's full potential? Let's build something remarkable together. For more information, visit our YouTube channel. Just search DaBomb Digital Media on YouTube and start exploring tips, success stories, and everything you need to elevate your brand.
1989.
Final reflections. 1987 was a year where executive power was used to stabilize, to respond, and to redefine. President Reagan's executive orders reflected a man navigating political firestorms, economic tremors, and cultural shifts, all while staying anchored to a deeply conservative philosophy of limited government and strong national defense. Whether you agreed with his methods or not, the legacy is clear. Many of Reagan's executive actions that year still influence public policy, economic security, national health, and foreign relations to this day. And now, we dig even deeper. Coming up next, we'll unpack each of those top 10 executive orders of 1987 with surgical precision. What they said, how they were enforced, and how they still shape your life now. Because here at Executive Order Watch, we live for democracy, we die for democracy, and we tell the truth for democracy. Let's keep going. As we turn the final page on the Reagan presidency, I want to take a moment to evaluate the final years of his administration, the tail end of 1988 and the opening days of 1989. History demands that we don't just remember what was done, but why it mattered. The executive orders signed in those last months weren't just ink on paper. They reflected Ronald Reagan's final stamp on the era he helped shape. Now, 1988 was a year of geopolitical complexity and domestic tension. Globally, the Iran-Iraq War was ending, not with peace, but with exhaustion. The Cold War hadn't thawed, but it had warmed. The Soviet Union was fracturing behind the Iron Curtain, and in Afghanistan, the Soviet withdrawal had begun, a sign of a global shift. Domestically, Americans were feeling both the confidence of economic recovery and the rising anxiety over debt, savings and loan instability, and widening inequality. And it was in this context that President Reagan issued a cascade of executive orders, each with a fingerprint of his ideology and some with consequences that would echo for decades. Let's talk about a few that stood out. EO 12656, signed November 18, 1988, outlined the emergency preparedness responsibilities across federal agencies. Now, this might sound like procedural government work, but it set a framework that's still used to this day in national disaster response and civil defense planning. This order, particularly in light of our post-9/11 and pandemic era realities, formed a structural backbone we've depended on. It emphasized continuity of government resource allocation and national security coordination in emergencies. That matters. Then there was EO 12657, the very same day, a mandate for FEMA to step into the role of assisting with emergency planning at commercial nuclear power plants. This came in the wake of Chernobyl's shadow and the lingering public distrust in nuclear safety. It pushed FEMA to think beyond floods and hurricanes and into the atomic age. Some say it was too late, others say it was overdue, but what can't be denied is that Reagan finally empowered FEMA in ways that modernized its scope. EO 12661, signed on December 27th, implemented sections of the Omnibus Trade and Competitiveness Act. This was a reaction to growing concern over American manufacturing slipping in the global race. Reagan, long the champion of deregulation and free markets, had to concede to a new industrial reality. We needed to respond to unfair trade practices abroad, especially from Japan. This order gave more teeth to U.S. trade enforcement mechanisms, a precursor to what many administrations, including my own, have relied on when defending American labor. And perhaps just as important, Executive Order 12662, signed December 31st, set in motion the implementation of the U.S.-Canada Free Trade Agreement, a major step toward the eventual creation of NAFTA. Some call it visionary, others call it a gut punch to American workers. The debate continues. But that order undeniably set the stage for a new economic era, one where globalization became policy, not just theory. In the opening days of 1989, Reagan continued issuing orders, even as his successor, President George H.W. Bush, prepared to step in. On January 6, 1989, he signed Executive Order 12663, adjusting federal pay, and Executive Order 12664, establishing an emergency board for railway disputes. These weren't flashy, but they showed the administrative machinery still in motion. Then, just days before leaving office, Reagan signed EO 12667, the Presidential Records Order. This one has had long-lasting constitutional implications. It granted public access to presidential documents and memos with national security safeguards. It was about transparency, about preserving the history of the office, not just the man who occupied it. And while it was later revoked and rewritten, this order was a nod to the idea that the presidency is a trust, not a possession. But not every order helped. Some emergency boards were seen as band-aids, not long-term labor solutions. The trade and labor exclusions in Executive Order 12666 sparked criticism that Reagan continued to weaken the rights of federal unions and organized workers. Critics said the order was more about diminishing resistance than improving efficiency. And EO 12665, a last-minute amendment to nuclear disaster policy, seemed more like a bureaucratic fix than a bold new plan. So how do we judge this final phase of executive action? It was a mix, a flurry of technocratic orders, some late-stage course corrections, and a few defining steps that either reinforced Reagan's legacy or set wheels turning for future change. Some showed restraint, others quietly expanded executive power. The economic orders aimed to shield American industries. The emergency preparedness ones gave structure to federal responses that we now take for granted. And the transparency order, well, that one showed a surprising level of civic humility. Now, my friends, in the next segment, we'll explore the top 10 executive orders of Reagan's final year, the ones that shaped the institutions, shaped the people, and yes, shaped the America we live in today. Stay tuned. As we turn the final pages of Ronald Reagan's presidency, we arrive at the twilight of 1988 and the opening weeks of 1989, a period marked by both quiet power and global turbulence. Reagan was preparing to pass the torch, but make no mistake, his pen was still active and his influence far from dormant. In those final months, he issued executive orders that touched everything from emergency preparedness and trade competitiveness to nuclear safety, pay rates, and presidential transparency. And so, today, we take a look at 10 of those executive orders, not just in how they defined Reagan's final imprint on the White House, but how they shaped the world we live in today. Global events of 1988 to 1989 Soviet-Afghan War ends, a major blow to the Soviet Union and a sign of Cold War decline. Iran-Iraq War ceasefire set the stage for Saddam Hussein's rise and future Gulf conflicts. Pan Am Flight 103 bombing over Lockerbie, heightened global concerns over terrorism. Poland's Solidarity movement, a beginning of the end for Soviet-style communism in Eastern Europe. Fall of the Berlin Wall looms. East Germans were already fleeing. The pressure was building. Major U.S.-only events. Savings and loan crisis peaks, putting pressure on the financial system. AIDS epidemic awareness surges, with activists demanding faster federal response. George H.W. Bush elected, signaling continuity with Reagan's policies. But also a shift. The fairness doctrine is eliminated, reshaping the future of media and partisan broadcasting. Crack epidemic escalates, leading to controversial and racially biased sentencing laws. Top 10 Reagan executive orders of 1988 to 1989 and their modern impact. When Ronald Reagan left the White House in January of 1989, he left behind more than just memories. He left behind signatures on documents that still shape the way we govern, respond to crisis, trade, and preserve democracy. These executive orders, particularly in the last year of his presidency, were not ceremonial, they were structural. Some were visionary, some were divisive, but each one holds a legacy. Let's take a deep, honest look at the 10 most significant executive orders from that pivotal 1988 to 1989 window and how they echo into the world we now live in. Number 1, Executive Order 12,656, Assignment of Emergency Preparedness Responsibilities, November 18, 1988. This wasn't just a checklist for agencies. It was a constitutional blueprint for continuity of government. EO 12,656 designated how the United States would operate in the face of catastrophe, nuclear attack, massive infrastructure failure, or coordinated acts of terror. Each federal department was assigned responsibilities to ensure the survival of the Republic. At the time, the Cold War was winding down, but uncertainty loomed. This order didn't just prepare for bombs, it prepared for biological weapons, cyber attacks, economic sabotage, long before we had the terminology for such threats. Today, Executive Order 12,656 remains foundational for how FEMA, the Department of Defense, and Homeland Security function under national emergency declarations. We updated the language, we modernized the response tools, but the bones of the operation, that's Reagan's legacy. Number 2, Executive Order 12,667, Presidential Records, January 18, 1989. This order was bold. It mandated that presidential documents and records, once shielded under executive privilege, would become the property of the American people. With this stroke, Reagan turned away from the secrecy of the Nixon years and toward a more open presidency. In practice, it meant that memos, policy debates, speech drafts, and crisis response discussions would be available through the National Archives after a president's term. It was about accountability. Though later revoked under George W. Bush and partially restored by President Obama, its legacy is clear today, from the release of 9/11 internal records to transparency battles over January 6th communications. It set the precedent that the presidency is not a private institution. It belongs to history and to the people. Number 3, Executive Order 12,661, implementing the Omnibus Trade and Competitiveness Act of 1988, December 27, 1988. This order armed the Department of Commerce and the U.S. Trade Representative with new tools to enforce fair trade practices. It wasn't just about tariffs. It was about responding to foreign governments manipulating markets, especially in sectors like steel, semiconductors, and autos. The order acknowledged a harsh truth. Globalization, left unchecked, could harm American industry. For a president known for free market rhetoric, this was a pivot. In hindsight, Executive Order 12,661 laid groundwork for modern economic nationalism. It's echoed in supply chain policies during COVID, semiconductor independence, and recent bipartisan actions on Chinese market competition. Number 4, Executive Order 12,662, implementing the U.S. Canada Free Trade Agreement, December 31, 1988. Signed mere hours before Reagan left office, this EO implemented one of the most consequential trade deals in North American history. It opened borders, cut tariffs, and redefined regional economic cooperation. Supporters hailed it as an economic accelerator. Critics warned it would cost American jobs. And they were partially right. Manufacturing towns began feeling the squeeze. Today, this order is the precursor to NAFTA and now USMCA. It altered how we view continental trade, sparked the rise of cross-border corporate supply chains, and forced American labor to adapt in a global economy. It still drives political debates about outsourcing, union strength, and corporate accountability. Number 5, Executive Order 12,657, FEMA and Nuclear Plant Emergency Preparedness, November 18, 1988. Reagan extended FEMA's mission to include planning for disasters at commercial nuclear facilities. This wasn't just about 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl fallout. It was about putting radiological emergency response on par with hurricanes and earthquakes. It mandated coordination between FEMA, the NRC, and state agencies to rehearse for worst-case scenarios at nuclear sites. That order lives on today in the drills that occur near plants like Indian Point and Diablo Canyon. In a world where nuclear energy is resurging as a climate solution, this order remains a silent but crucial safeguard. Number 6, Executive Order 12,666, Federal Labor Management Program Exclusions, January 12, 1989. This order amended Carter's Executive Order 12,171 by excluding additional agencies from federal labor management relations rules. Critics slammed it as union busting, a final jab at organized labor. Reagan had begun his presidency by firing 11,000 air traffic controllers. He ended it by limiting union rights for more federal workers. In the modern context, this order contributed to the decades-long decline in federal union power. It remains controversial, especially as today's public servants push for improved bargaining rights. Number 7, Executive Order 12,659, delegating Naval Petroleum and Oil Shale Authority, December 15, 1988. Here, Reagan handed power to the Secretary of Energy over the federal reserves of petroleum and oil shale. It was about privatization and streamlining, cornerstones of Reaganomics. He didn't want bureaucratic delays standing in the way of energy production. This authority still matters, especially during times of energy crisis. When oil prices spike or reserves are tapped, this EO made sure decision makers didn't have to wait for Congress to act. It empowered rapid response, but critics argue it concentrated too much discretion without oversight. Number 8, Executive Order 12,665, amending the Nuclear Catastrophe Commission Order, January 12, 1989. This was a quick revision to EO 12,658, the President's Commission on Catastrophic Nuclear Accidents. It clarified administrative procedures and scope for investigating worst-case nuclear scenarios. These weren't just imaginary threats. Reagan had overseen a world traumatized by Chernobyl, and this order was part of a late-game effort to respond. The Commission's framework still influences how we study the intersection of private utility accountability and federal oversight in energy disasters. Number 9, Executive Order 12,660. establishing the National Microgravity Research Board, December 16, 1988. This order prioritized space-based research into microgravity effects on materials, biology, and manufacturing. It recognized that U.S. dominance in space had to move beyond Cold War prestige into innovation and commercialization. NASA, universities, and private partners all benefited from this foundation. You see echoes of it today in SpaceX partnerships, space-based drug research, and materials science conducted aboard the International Space Station. Number 10, Executive Order 12,664, Emergency Board, Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, January 6, 1989. Reagan issued this EO to mediate a labor dispute between the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation and unionized train operators. The intent was to prevent rail strikes and maintain transportation stability in the New York metropolitan region. While limited in scope, it demonstrated the President's ability to intervene swiftly to protect regional economies. These kinds of orders continue today, most recently when rail unions faced potential strike action in 2022. Closing, Biden at the podium. So when we look back at Reagan's last year in office, what do we see? We see a man finishing with a flurry of executive direction, some subtle, some seismic. Orders that empowered trade negotiators, preserved presidential transparency, defined disaster readiness, and rewrote the rules of labor and energy policy. Not all were successes, not all were fair, but many of them, for better or worse, still shape the way we live today. And next, we'll count down the legacy. The top 10 Reagan executive orders across all 8 years. The greatest impacts, the most defining moments. Stay with us.
Some write history with blood, some with laws. But the sharpest stroke comes from the pen. Executive power ain't just a tool. It's a weapon wielded by the few, affecting the many. They sign it. We live it. They order it. We obey it. Here, watching, digging, remembering. From the plantation to the proclamation, from internment camps to civil rights stands, from surveillance laws to student loan draws. Order can change your life, and you might not even know it, but now you do. So stay locked in, stay woke, stay sharp. We ain't just talking about power, we tracking it. Executive Order Watch, and we ain't blinking.